Hi folks, Florida Man here, and today I'm bringing you an after-action report on a PDT SuperPastis21 game. This time it's game 1B. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's nice to meet you.
And you?
Kuchevnik or Lyle. It's good to be chatting with you about this game from the SuperPastis21 event. I understand that you were in game 1B.
Yes. And I was France.
Yes. And how did you go into this game? What were you thinking you'd do? And what were your early thoughts and negotiations like?
Well, initially, I thought that I was going to try and build fleets and get into the Mediterranean, because I've never used that strategy with France before, and I've always wanted to try it. But in the early negotiations, England messaged both Germany and I and wanted to do a Western triple. And while neither Germany nor I responded with a yes, neither of us said no. In the meantime, I talked to Germany separately and offered a 2-year non-aggression pact. I did the same to Italy and offered a 3-year non-aggression pact, figuring that would give me some time to build and get established.
Interesting. So at that point, were you thinking you were probably going to go after England, or?
No, that decision came later.
Okay.
Basically after the first couple of moves, because both Germany and I were concerned about England's erratic play, or what we considered to be his erratic play. So we decided that we needed to eliminate that chaos from the north and go from there.
Okay. Well, going to the spring 1901 then, I see that England opens north, opens basically as if there's a possible Western triple going on, not particularly defensive of you or Germany, although, you know, there aren't any moves that England could make that would really be aggressive toward Germany in spring. And you make an opening that looks as if you could be prepared to go south. It's certainly not aggressive to either England or Germany.
Right.
So to a spectator, I think this looks an awful lot like a Western triples going on. I do see that Italy moves into Piedmont, though, violating your agreement with them, I guess.
Well, and immediately after this move, I contacted Italy and asked him about that move, because it seemed a little aggressive to me. And he said that he was just not sure yet, but that he wasn't going to go any further. So
that doesn't sound very trustworthy.
Well, he asked me what I meant by non-aggression pact. And I said, I don't move across your border. I don't attack your units. It's pretty self-explanatory. So
yeah. I'm always kind of astonished when some players will try to argue that that for Italy to move into Piedmont isn't aggressive toward France, or for one of the England or France to move into the Channel early on isn't aggressive toward the other, or something along those lines. It's like arguing that Germany moving into Prussia and Silesia isn't aggressive toward Russia or something.
Russia, right. Now, playing Italy, I have moved into the Piedmont and moved the army in Rome to Venice. But you've got to have a real close agreement with France to do that. And the reason for that is it makes it real hard to get into the Italian boot from there without fleets.
I see.
It makes a good, because Switzerland on the north makes a good blockade for anything coming down from the north. But you've got to talk to France real well if you're going to do that.
Sounds like Italy didn't accomplish the mission of talking to you that well.
No, he didn't let me know he was moving in there.
So going into the fall, what were you thinking?
I was thinking that I was going to have to move into Marseille from Paris, because Paris had held. But in talking to Italy, he assured me he wasn't going to move into Marseille, so I was free to move into Burgundy. It was taking a chance, but it part of playing diplomacy is taking those chances. So.
Yeah, and here it actually did pay off. I was thinking that when I looked at the orders before, I was thinking that I was going to see you moving into Marseille, because that's the normal thing to do in this situation, I think, where Italy moved into Piedmont, had said something about non-aggression, and hadn't told you that they might go to Piedmont. But your risk-taking decision here pays off, and now you are positioned to go against Italy if you want to.
Yeah. And I had originally intended to move from Paris to Burgundy in the spring. I let Germany know that's what I was going to do. He asked me to delay that move until the fall. Didn't seem like an unreasonable request, so I complied.
Well, seems like it ends up working out. You're well positioned to defend against Germany or Italy, and meanwhile, you avoided getting involved in the conflict over Belgium that seems to have broken out between England and Germany.
Yeah, that was part of the problem that Germany and I discussed afterwards, because we had worked out Germany getting Belgium, and then England decided to change his mind.
Oh.
And that was part of the erratic play that we were trying to do away with when my emphasis turned from the south to the north.
I see. At this point, with these two fleet builds, were you thinking that they were going to go south or go north?
Originally, I was going to go south, but when the decision was made to go to England, then I've got to swing my fleets around to the north.
Well, that seems like very good fortune for Italy, because I think Italy really thought you were going to come after him, and that's why Italy moves into the Tyrrhenian Sea at this point and moves Piedmont, Marseille. I think it's all pretty defensive. And, in addition, at the same time, Germany moves into Burgundy.
Yeah, I had to ask him about that, and he apologized profusely and backed out the next move.
Oh, that's good. That's a relief. What was England saying about you getting into the Channel in the mid-Atlantic?
Once I moved into the Channel, England stopped communicating with me.
Oh, that's a shame. England shouldn't have violated an agreement that was put on the record with both of his neighbors, I guess. That's like a pretty significant mistake to make in 1901.
Yep. It was a little too early for that kind of shenanigans.
Anything else of interest you want to point out about the map at this point in 1902?
It was evident from looking at the map, and poor Turkey, we had a change of players right after the first move, because the Turkish player who had originally signed up had a family emergency and had to back out.
I see.
So we got a substitute player, and he was in kind of a bad position and got jumped on immediately. But it was evident from the middle of the board that Germany and Austria-Hungary had some kind of agreement, unknown as to how far it went, but they were obviously leaving each other alone. Russia struggled as normal when she's being hit by two neighbors in the south. Good position in the north at first, but tenuous position. Russia's so hard to play sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. If any two of your neighbors decide they don't like you,
yeah,
that can be a really difficult thing as Russia. Going into the fall season, I see you are really making this aggressive invasion commitment against England. I'm kind of surprised you were willing to do that. Did Italy convince you that they were just moving defensively? Did you?
Yeah, Italy and I, again, we had a non-aggression pact, and it was supposed to be good for 3 years. So this is the fall move of the second year, and so far we have both honored the agreement.
That is interesting. Italy's moved into Gulf of Leon, though. What are you thinking about that?
Well, that's why I moved back to cover Marseille. It's okay to have a non-aggression pact, but you don't want to tempt them too far.
No, it seems like if you'd been leaving yourself vulnerable, there'd have been some real risk of Italy taking advantage there. And with England having lost the North Sea and Norway, I guess England's prospects are starting to look pretty bleak. and also with you in Wales and Irish Sea and the Channel.
Yep.
So I guess this is going to be probably be an early game for England. And you don't have a build, so nothing really to discuss here. But in the spring, what was the reasoning behind the decision to put Germany in London instead of you, perhaps?
Well, Germany and I had a bit of a miscommunication. I suggested taking Liverpool first and then putting him into London in the fall, because that way we both gain a port. And in the process of the conversation, I had forgotten that, and he said that he wanted my support into London in the spring. So trying to keep at least one of my alliances intact, I supported him into London in the spring. We should have gone the other way.
Yeah, seems like that would have been something good to insist on in retrospect, because I can tell looking at this position, you're probably not going to get Liverpool unless you're just... Oh, it's just a matter of luck, because England can defend it using the units in Edinburgh and Clyde. And looking at the map, I see that England does defend it, and you, knowing that England can defend it, you don't even try to take it, you maneuver around instead.
Right.
Of course, with England reduced to 2 centers as of the conclusion of this year, might not matter too much.
Well, at this point, Russia asked for Edinburgh. and I said, no, not only no, but hell no.
Yeah.
You know, I'm doing all the work here. I'm not going to support you into Edinburgh. Bad enough I had to give London to Germany, so.
Yeah, agreed. The unfortunate thing is that with Germany getting into London and Sweden, I see Germany getting most of the growth from this sequence of events. I'm a little concerned that you might get turned on at some point.
Well, and I did eventually, but it takes a couple more turns.
On the bright side, you did get Italy to leave you alone here.
Yes. She decided to help Austria and Turkey.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good path for Italy. You got to eliminate either France or Turkey early on, I think, in order to give yourself some security.
Yep. And Turkey was the more vulnerable, so.
A lot more, looks like. Since Germany was so good as to vacate Burgundy instead of trying to hang around there.
Yes.
Going to the builds. Germany has quite the armada now. In addition to having a larger land force than you, Germany also has 4 fleets.
It really surprised me to see Germany build more fleets.
Yeah.
I had thought that the fleets would be my purview and he would build land units, but we didn't discuss that, so I was surprised to see the fleet.
Yeah, it seems pretty clear that Germany has more than enough fleets to defeat Russia now, so what are those extra fleets for?
Right.
Did you start thinking about any kind of provision, any kind of way of dealing with Germany at this point?
Well, because our conversations were still fairly amicable, and we were talking about him taking over Scandinavian countries, you know, Norway, and then moving into Finland to threaten St. Pete. That's all the further we discussed it. I was trying to get him to move to the northeast and let me finish off England, and for the most part, he did that for a couple of moves.
Yeah, I do see. Well, actually, no. Look,
he supported Edinburgh.
Germany looks like he tapped Edinburgh, but Germany's other units are kind of moving south and west, more towards you, because
yeah. When he moved into Picardy, I became concerned.
Yeah, he tried to move into Burgundy at the same time too.
And I told him that I was going to move into Burgundy just to turn it back to blue, and then move from Burgundy to Paris. So,
oh man, Germany is getting ready to fight.
Yeah.
Okay, so on the bright side, though, England isn't going to be a problem anymore, really.
No.
So that's something. But it does look like Germany's ready to fight, and England is not a problem, but Italy is probably joining Germany because that fleet that was in Naples is in the Mediterranean Sea now. at this point, do you start trying to take some diplomatic measures to get yourself some allies against Germany and Italy?
Well, I started talking more to Austria-Hungary. But like I said, it was pretty obvious from the get-go that Austria-Hungary and Germany had some kind of alliance going, and since Austria has mostly armies and not fleets, it would be very difficult for him to get into Italy, especially with his involvement in the Black Sea area. Wow. Russia and I had talked, but none of it was amicable.
That is unfortunate. Looking ahead, I see you did acquire Edinburgh. I'm kind of surprised, honestly, that Germany didn't try to support Edinburgh to hold or something, but I guess Germany figured it would be better for him to take the Channel and get closer to snagging some of your centers rather than stopping you from growing.
Well, and we did bounce in Paris. He moved from Picardy to Paris, and I moved from Gascony to Paris. And Germany did tell me that that's what he intended to do. He said, you can bounce me if you want. I thought, well, that was big of you. But yeah, I bounced him out of Paris. That way I had a port open to build in.
That is a very interesting set of exchanges. I am really surprised that Germany would tell you that. It's almost as if Germany didn't want to succeed in taking a center off of you.
Well, both Germany and Italy, we outside of our diplomacy about the game, we were chatting about how often we'd played and how long it had been since we played and that kind of thing. We kind of developed a friendship. So I think Germany was having a crisis of conscience about what was about to happen.
I guess stabbing people can be difficult.
Yeah, especially if they're friends.
Yeah, that's true. You can develop some affection for the other players that you don't want to be one of those people who lets the game ruin your friendship.
Right.
Which is what they say diplomacy does. But you want to remain civil, so it's hard to stab people as vigorously as you might otherwise do if you're worried about that.
Yeah, and not as much in online play as it is in face-to-face play.
Yeah, I can certainly imagine. Well, looking ahead, I see you naturally get a couple of new units because you had 2 new centers you acquired and you didn't lose anything. And their armies. And at this point, I mean, your outlook obviously is not as good as it could be. But did you have any kind of strategy you want to outline?
Well, with Germany's position now, it became a guessing game on my part on how to defend.
Yes, I see that.
Because it's either going to be Brest or Paris. He can attack them both, but he can only take one. I can support one and hold in the other. So it became a guessing game.
Yeah, I see.
Italy's moved to the mid-Atlantic. He told me he was coming. I had hoped when he got up there he'd be able to help me with the English Channel fleet.
Well, I mean, if Italy might consider helping you, that would be amazing.
It didn't turn out that way.
No, I'm not surprised, and I'm sure they won't either, unfortunately. Italy trying to help finish you off, and you bounce him and keep him from taking Spain, but he does get Portugal, and now you've also lost Paris.
Paris, yeah. And at this point, I'm talking to both of them about how long I'm going to last, because it's obvious that my days are numbered. Both of them were willing to let me hang around to the end, more or less. We talked about looking for a draw, as it was obvious that Germany and Austria were still
very close.
Very close. And Germany didn't think we could draw in this game. That we had to play to the end. And then when I think it was game C, Drew had a 6-player draw, like in 1906. That went out the window. But by that time, it was too late for me.
That is unfortunate because you had, up until this point when you got stabbed, you had been doing pretty well. Got up to 7. Um, but, I'm sure that the audience can tell, just as you were probably able to tell, that things were going to go pretty much all downhill from here unless something drastic changed.
Right.
And
yeah, it was time to start defending and trying to talk both Russia and Austria into doing something.
Yeah. And at any point, do you feel you start to have some success with that?
Not really.
Yeah. Russia has too many of their own problems.
Right.
And Austria is enjoying the fruits of success. This central triple alliance here that's emerged is proving to be very effective at eliminating Turkey and whittling you down now that England's gone as well. And also, they're clearly coming for Russia's head.
Yep.
So the game's direction, I guess, kind of continues to unfold in the same way. And if anything, maybe just it moves a little more quickly here. Like, you lose 2 centers at once, Russia loses 4 centers at once in this single season, and it really is getting very close to the end position that I recall.
Yep. I end up with nothing but an army in Brest.
Yeah.
But they let me stay.
Yeah, that is nice.
Yeah.
You're still here to the very end.
Yep.
And that's something.
And I think that's because I built friendship with both Germany and Italy throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
And they let me stay just because they took pity on me.
Well, the emotional factor in this game is a powerful one if you can use it in this way that you did here. And it can mean the difference between survival versus complete destruction, which is what Russia and Turkey and England all experienced.
Yeah.
And at an earlier point, Russia looks like they were doing pretty well, just like you. But now
fortunes can turn quickly.
Yes.
I did notice in this game, and this is something that I didn't usually see in face-to-face play.
Mm-hmm.
Both Germany and Austria, after the initial 2 moves and they built, they always left units on their home ports. Germany never uncovered Munich, and Austria never uncovered Vienna.
That is interesting.
It struck me as unusual because the slower pace of this game allows you to do that. When you're playing face-to-face, things go so quickly because you have so little time for diplomacy that things like that fall by the wayside. You're trying to get as many ports as you can. You need every unit you've got. In online play, that's not the case. At least it wasn't in this game.
No, I see your point.
The moves were a little slower. People were a little more cautious. That's a lesson that I'm taking into the next game.
And for the audience, because you told me before we were recording, what proportion of your play has been online versus face-to-face?
This was my first online game. I've played probably 300 games face-to-face.
Which is a remarkable number, and is comparable to like the highest numbers that some of us have achieved in terms of online play, really. But since you moved from a completely different method of play to this, I think you did kind of an impressive job of just surviving it all and using that social factor to do so. I wanted to ask if you had any other insights about this game or about the transition.
Well, I approached this game from the get-go as a learning experience for online play because it is such a different environment. I wasn't really concerned about how I did. I mean, I wanted to make it a good showing, obviously, but I wasn't concerned about winning or losing at this point because I was still getting familiar with the process. I think in my next game, having gotten that out of the way, things will be different. I do like the pace of this a little bit better, where you've got time to stop and consider and You've got 2 days to communicate back and forth for diplomacy. You've got time to look at the board and consider. Face-to-face play goes a little bit quicker. It's kind of like speed chess in that regard. You don't always get to make the optimum move. Sometimes you make the best one you can see at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I think that with face-to-face play, I believe it's closer to what the creator of the game intended the game to be. And yet, I think online play is, it can be in some ways a richer experience because you have the ability, if you want to invest a bunch of time thinking about what the best thing to do is and really working on the other players, on persuading them, on winning them over, on ingratiating yourself if that's your style.
Yep.
On doing a variety of different things that you would never have time to do in a face-to-face live game. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, diplomacy has always been one of my favorite games. And I've always wanted to get back into it, but finding 7 people for face-to-face play, or 6 others, obviously, is tough. Everybody's busy, and this takes a dedication of time. You could do it over several days, but you kind of lose your thread of thought if you do it that way. So it's better to do it all in one evening, but it is an evening.
Yeah, no, I agree. There is a danger I've noticed of losing my own train of thought, especially when I'm playing in more than one game. Especially if I'm playing more than one game as the same country.
Oh yeah, that would really be tough.
But yeah, I definitely like the 48-hour time limitation for this game. I think that's just right.
I think so. I think if you can't get it done in 48 hours, it probably isn't going to happen anyway. So
yeah. Well, any other insights you want to share about this game? I mean, it seems mostly kind of straightforward, I think, in a way, because the central triple that emerged ended up over the last half of the game just very steadily chipping away at their opponents until they were the only ones left. And there wasn't a lot of trickery after that point once they had established themselves.
Right. After that, it was pretty straightforward on all their parts.
Yes. But any last thoughts for the audience that you wanted to share?
Not about this game in particular, but about diplomacy in general.
Yeah.
It's outside of chess, it's probably the best game ever produced. The luck factor in it doesn't exist. You're not dependent on anything except your own wits and your ability to communicate. I love that in the game. That's that element that's missing in chess, because in chess you can sit there across the board from your opponent and never say a word. But you can't do that in diplomacy. You've got to communicate. You've got to interact.
I agree. It is really interesting, and I think it is the only game I can think of that would even compete with chess in terms of greatest games of all time. I think it's so elemental, it's relatively simple, but it's got so many different permutations because it's such an interesting idea. No 2 games are ever the same.
Nope, there's no set pattern to any of the games. Every one of them is unique.
Well, thank you for making the time to do this after action report and chat with me.
Sure. I've enjoyed it.
Likewise. Hope you enjoyed this diplomacy commentary after action report. And if you liked it, you know what to do. Like and subscribe and check out my blog and my Patreon or Ko-Fi. I should note the people whose names now appear on screen are those without whom this channel and its growth, as it currently exists, might not be possible. So they have my thanks. And until next time, Florida Man out.